Hey, would you believe me if I told you that the way you see a glass and interpret it, whether it's half full or half empty from your perspective, has everything to do with your ability to sell, to build relationships, to create more revenue? Sean Isaacs here, the Wisdom Coach, creator of the Proverbs 12X series, right? How to get wisdom for self, wealth, and relationships. And I am in the middle of a series that I'm entitling Help, I Hate Selling. I've met a lot of people over the years, business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals who could easily double or triple their revenue if they learn to embrace sales as something that's actually a good thing. I am in the middle of a book called 91 Mistakes Smart Sellers Make. And today we're going to look at mistake number 11, which Tim calls being pessimistic. Tim says, is the glass half full or half empty? Will this product, policy, or strategy work or fail? Can I really achieve my dreams, or am I living in fantasy land? These and hundreds of other questions, he says, are asked every day by well-meaning and hardworking salespeople. This reminds me of God's words through Solomon in Proverbs 15, verse 15, which says this. It says, all the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Did you hear the description there? All the days of the afflicted are evil. Now, if you don't understand how to interpret Scripture or how to read Scripture accurately, you would think that Solomon is addressing someone in difficult circumstances. The afflicted sounds like someone in the midst of great trouble and trial. But the Hebrew idea for afflicted, it's not merely external suffering. It often describes one who is low, who is bowed down, or inwardly oppressed. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Evil here has the idea of not always moral evil. It often means troubled, grievous, or distressing. And then the term a merry heart. This is not a shallow happiness. Notice it doesn't say a person who's merry. It says a merry heart. It's describing a disposition. This is a person whose heart is rightly ordered and ordering their inner condition, right? And then the text says, he that's of a merry heart has a continual feast. It's not referring to literal food. What Solomon is saying is, this is a life marked by ongoing satisfaction, strength, and capacity. Many of God's people understand and know Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, which says, I can do all things through Christ. Not enough emphasize the last phrase, through Christ who strengthens or strengtheneth me. The text says that Christ strengthens the believer, which implies that as a child of God, I don't have strength on my own. Why is that an important thing? Because a continual feast is a life marked by ongoing satisfaction, strength, and capacity. So, the idea in this text is, this is contrasting two different inner conditions, producing two completely different life experiences. And you say, I hate selling. I don't like selling. I don't enjoy selling. What if I tell you that what you experience, what you feel, what you describe is directly related to your perception and what's going on inside of you, your inner world? Tim goes on to say, in his great book, Optimism, The Biology of Hope, written over 40 years ago, that's 40 years prior to Tim writing his 91 Mistakes Smart Sellers Make, Lionel Tiger, he says, discusses how optimism impacts a person's attitude outlook, success, and health. He suggests that people who are less optimistic about life, the present, and the future tend to get sick more frequently and often die sooner. Here's a nugget of wisdom for you. All of us, yes, you included, are selfish by nature. And because we are, and we tend to do what's in our best interest, God has structured much of his world and even his kingdom to be tied to benefits that we receive. One of the eye-opening things to study, if you've never done it, is how many times God ties incentives to do the right thing to rewards, to benefits for us. And there are some people who will never change their perspective or work on changing a pessimistic view until they understand how painful it can be for them, health-wise, financially, emotionally, relationally, psychologically. This writer, Lionel Tiger, I suspect is not a Christian, and it always shocks me the amount of times that non-followers of Jesus are able to find answers to solve life problems without Jesus, without the Bible. And of course, I can go to the Bible and see that the answers are in the scriptures, though they didn't give God credit, and though they may not recognize where the answers come from. What inspires me is if they can do it without God, without Christ, without the scriptures, without the community of God's people, then what's the excuse for the children of God? Solomon again says, all the days of the afflicted are evil. Who's the afflicted? This is a person who's internally bowed down. This is a person who's troubled on the inside. This is a person who's inwardly oppressed. They're continually evil. That means their life doesn't feel happy. You know, I got on a flight today with my wife coming from Florida back to the New Jersey airport. And there was a couple that was seeking to get into their seat. That was a seat or two behind where we were sitting. And there were two women sitting in their seats. Now, it's an easy mistake to make. You know, if you're looking at a 22D, A, B, C, or D, E, F, they made a mistake. They should have been on the other side of the plane. And so the flight attendant happens to be there, and this man and woman seems a little bit troubled that someone is, quote, sitting in their seat. I put it in quotes because it shocks me how much not only ownership people take with things, but the inability to adjust when things don't go the way it was expected or planned. By the way, that shows an internal issue, right? And so here's what happens. So the couple is sitting, the two women are sitting in the seat, and the third seat is open, and the three seats on the left are completely open. And so the flight attendant says, "Sir, ma'am, would you just mind just sitting on the other side?" And the guy's like, "No." She's like, "Hey, the seats are exactly the same. It's just the other side." And the guy said, "No, I want the seats that we got." And I thought, this must not be a happy couple. And you're like, "Sean, how can you draw that conclusion?" Here's how I've drawn it. Because I've lived long enough to understand a lot about people's reaction to disappointment, to things that don't go their way. That tells me a lot about the person. So within less than a minute, the couple is out of the seats, and the husband and wife, I think, they seem like a husband and wife, are seeking now to move into their seats. But now they have a problem because the woman is a little bit older, and the bag is a little bit heavy. And she can't lift it, I can tell. And so I said, "Would you like me to help you with the bag?" And yes, sure. Matter of fact, she wasn't even certain. I don't think she even said yes. But she seemed sort of like, "I want help, but I don't want to ask for it." But I just took it upon myself to take the bag and put it up for her. She then made this comment when I did that. She said to her husband, "Oh, that was a really nice man." And I then said, "Yeah, the world is filled with a lot of nice people." Now, if you know me, I don't always have a plan on what I'm going to say. I just say what I feel at the moment or what I think about at the moment. Her response to that was then, "No, there are not a lot of nice people in the world. And And then she went on to say, especially today. And what she was referring to is not this specific day. She was referring to this era and season of life. And she began to, I think, want to begin to tell me how bad things are. And I just didn't entertain the conversation. And I thought to myself, and you're like, Sean, how can you make this judgment? And all of this is in a 3-minute window. Because I've spent enough time around people to kind of know what and who people are. By temperament, by response, by reactions. And I said to myself, I wanted to say, ma'am, you really need to turn off the news. Here's why. Because if you only go by the narrative of the news, right, you will think the world and America is far worse than it really is. You would think the day in which you live is far worse. Now, what does that have to do with selling? Everything. Because the things you hear and expose yourself to has everything to do with how your heart will be programmed. This is why God says through Solomon, keep the heart with all diligence. Why? For out of it flows the issues of life. Out of it flows the direction of life. So what I read, what I listen to, who I interact with has everything to do with how my heart is programmed and conditioned to react and respond to life around me. So let me give you 3 quick points here. First, again, Tim says you can measure optimism, he says. He says you can't measure optimism. You can't bottle it, regulate it, run out of it, or manufacture it, but you can learn to develop it if you will only take the time and effort. I love that phrase. You can't measure it, you can't bottle it, you can't regulate it, you can't manufacture it, you can't make it out of nothing. But I love the last phrase he says, but you can develop it if you will only take the time and the effort. He says some people feel it is better to be realistic than optimistic. Did you get that? Some people believe it's better to be realistic than optimistic. And you say, yes, Sean, that's reality. And that's how life is. You know what? The person said no, they're not interested in the sale. You know what? I got rejected again. That's the 3rd call I make. They're not interested. And I'm telling you, if that's your mentality, it will affect not only your selling ability, it will affect your relationships, your life, and your ability to create wealth. Why? Because facts are not truth. Reality is not truth. Reality is a perception. You say, Sean, how can you say that? How do you know? Well, because the children of Israel are standing in front of the Red Sea. Behind them are the enemies of Israel coming to slay them. And the reality is they're going to die. The facts are they are going to die. And if their mentality is to be moved, to be governed, guided, and directed by what they see, what they feel, what they hear, then Moses does not have faith to believe God. Here's another nugget of wisdom. Guess what? If Moses did not believe God, he would not have stretched out the rod. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it is impossible. Say after me, impossible. That's right. Say it. It's impossible to please God. Why? For they that believe that God is must believe that he's a rewarder of those who, quote, diligently seek him. You can't seek him if you don't believe him. You won't go for the answer if you believe what you see, what you feel, what you're experiencing is all there is. So, Tim says you can't measure optimism. Some people feel it is better to be realistic than optimistic. Why set yourself up for disappointment, they say. Tell me what is realistic, he says. Looking back over the past 100 years, where would we have been if Edison, Bell, Gates, Ford, Land, and Disney had been realistic? If their attitude had been, quote, it hasn't been done yet, so I guess it can't be done. There are numerous benefits, Tim says, to having an optimistic outlook and just as many pitfalls in not having one. Here are a few benefits to having an optimistic outlook, he says. You will achieve more, have more fun, be happier, have more friends, enjoy life more, and you will be healthier. So, as I wrap up our nugget of wisdom here, I want to give you 3 things from the text I just read, and I want to encourage you to memorize this text. Proverbs 15:15. All the days of the afflicted are evil. It's not describing their circumstances, it's describing their internal disposition. How do we know? Because the opposite of the afflicted is to have a merry heart. But he that is of a merry heart, see, the Proverbs have contrasts. It is contrasting the afflicted and the merry heart, right? And it says, but he or she that's of a merry heart has a continual feast. So, number 1, all the days of the afflicted are evil. This is a shocking statement. It doesn't say some days are evil. It doesn't say it doesn't say bad seasons are evil. It says all the days of the afflicted are evil. Why? Because the issue is not the circumstances. The issue is the condition of the heart interpreting the circumstances. Did you hear what I just said? It's not the circumstances, it is the state and the condition of the heart interpreting the circumstances. See, a pessimistic person does not just experience difficulty, they multiply it. They interpret everything through the lens of limitation, discouragement, and doubt. So even neutral or good situations feel heavy. So here's what you and I can learn from this. A pessimistic perspective does not just see problems. It manufactures problems. That's point number 1. Point number 2. The heart shapes reality. What's our first point? Perspective determines your experience. You should write that down. Perspective determines your experience. Right? I remember as a seller, I would drive 2 hours to a meeting from New Jersey to Brooklyn, New York. Often, sometimes I would get there and the potential prospect forgot to make a note for the meeting. They didn't put it on their calendar. This was a time prior to cell phones, so I couldn't call them and confirm on my way. I couldn't text them. And I would get there and they don't show up. And guess what? I learned how to be content. Paul says, I learned how to abound and to, right? Whatever state I'm in, he says, I've learned. And what I learned by having those circumstances over and over and over and over again, that guess what? When it happened the 10th or the 15th or the 30th time, it didn't matter at all. It didn't affect me. It didn't affect my day. I wasn't complaining going back. Didn't do anything to me. Guess what I did? I just made an adjustment. I'm like, okay, God, I showed up here. This person didn't remember. I'm going to reschedule the meeting. Well, is there somebody else I can see while I'm here? I'm telling you, you hate sales because the state and the condition of your heart impacts how you view the world around you and the circumstances that are happening to you instead of for you. So perspective determines experience. Secondly, the heart shapes reality. It says, but he that is of a merry heart. See, this is not a personality. This is not a temperament. This is an inner formation. I love to study the temperaments. I was studying it today on the plane. And the reason I love doing that is because it helped me to understand people. But I would be the first to tell you that I've met Christians. Matter of fact, my former boss, who I hope will see this, he interpreted temperaments in a way to paralyze people, even as Christians. He just felt, well, that's the person's temperament, that's all they can do. No. The fruit of the Spirit makes up for those weaknesses in our temperaments, right? So this is not a personality trait. This is an inner formation. See, the heart in Scripture is the seat of thought, seat of belief. It is how we interpret our world, and it impacts our expectations. So what Solomon is teaching us is this. My life and yours is not first shaped by what happens to us. It is shaped by how our heart processes what happens to us. That couple got to their seat and two people were sitting, quote, in their seats. And that could have ruined their day. If the two women suggested, hey, just sit on the other side, it'll be fine, that could have escalated and turned into something unnecessary. And our nation is filled with people that cannot be inconvenienced, and they are filled with pride and haughtiness. Why? Because humility will cause you to adapt and adjust. Why? Because you're not entitled to anything. Yes, I know you picked out the seat and somebody made a mistake, right? Adjust. So, two people can walk into the same opportunity. One sees possibility, the other sees risk. And they walk away with completely different results. Thirdly, point number 3. Inner condition produces ongoing results. Our inner condition produces ongoing results. Notice the text says, he that is of a merry heart, quote, has a continual feast. See, this is the result. It's not occasional. This is not a random thing. This person has a continual feast. This is a principle and governing of that person's life. See, right inner condition produces sustained external fruit. So, as we wrap up, pessimism produces hesitation, delay, withdrawal. You're not going to make the calls because you're afraid. They're going to say no. But the rightly ordered heart produces movement, engagement, and resilience. So what you consistently expect will eventually shape what you consistently experience. Let me say that again. What you and I consistently expect, our expectations, will shape what we consistently experience. Now, why does pessimism destroy sales, results in growth? Number 1, it kills prospecting. A pessimistic person thinks this won't work, they won't respond, this lead isn't good, this is not a good quality lead, this lead is not serious. So what happens? They delay outreach, they avoid calls, they lower their activity. Secondly, what does it do? It weakens communication. The prospect can't feel, the prospect now feels doubt, hesitation, lack of conviction. So what happens? It affects the sale. If you lack belief, if you lack clarity or confidence, it's going to affect how you talk about the product or the service. See, pessimism leaks into the tone of the seller. And when confidence drops, trust drops. Lastly, it distorts opportunity. See, a pessimistic person overestimates risk, underestimates opportunity. So they don't follow up, they don't ask for the sale, and they don't pursue large deals. They talk themselves out of growth. Pessimism does not protect you and I from failure. What it does is it quietly ensures underperformance. So, what can you do about all this? What can we do? 3 things, quickly. Guard your interpretation of reality. Guard your interpretation of reality. Same lead, same market, same opportunity, different interpretation, different result. Ask yourself, am I seeing this accurately or am I seeing it negatively? That's a great question. Secondly, discipline your inner dialogue. We all talk to ourselves. A lot of coaching on communication is worried about how to communicate to others and how to listen to others. There's not enough conversation about how to hear your own voice and how to communicate to yourself. What are you saying to yourself? See, before every call, meeting, or opportunity, replace "this probably won't work" with "this is an opportunity to serve. This is an opportunity to solve. This is an opportunity to move forward." Lastly, build a continual feast mindset. The merry heart is a continual feast. Imagine what life could look like, what your relationships would be like. Imagine what your home life would be like. Imagine how you would face difficult messages that you receive. Daily, practice a couple things, right? Identify 3 opportunities in front of you. Identify 3 things working in your favor. And then move on at least one of them immediately. Thirdly, build a continual feast mindset. Daily practice these things. Identify 3 opportunities that are right in front of you. Identify 3 things working in your favor, and then move on at least one of those immediately. What does this do? It trains your heart toward gratitude, toward confident or optimistic expectation, and toward movement. I want to end by giving you Webster's definition of these 2 words, pessimism and optimism. The word, obviously, I like to use Webster's 1828 edition. That's before it got corrupted. And so it doesn't have these words in full, but we get much of the understanding from the Latin. And so optimism, from the Latin optimus, has the idea of a person disposed to expect favorable outcomes. One who inclines to view circumstances in their most advantageous light. Pessimism. The root word is pessimus, Latin word, and the idea is a disposition or habit of mind inclined. Those 3 words, disposition, habit, and inclined, are very insightful. Inclined to expect unfavorable outcomes. One who interprets events through a lens of difficulty, limitation, or anticipated failure. So optimism, you could say, is a trained expectation that good can come from what is in front of me. Pessimism is a trained expectation that things will not work even before action is taken. Sean Isaacs here, the Wisdom Coach. Wisdom for Wealth Creation. This is mistake number 11. Why smart sellers don't succeed. It's mistake number 11 is having a pessimistic outlook on life. If you need help in creating sales, there should be a link that you can get access to my calendar. Let's block a time and jump on Zoom for 20 minutes. Let me assist and help you with the wisdom of God. Have a great day.